All right. So all that we can do from here, you can also find things like, I think I need to restart it. Yeah. Yeah. So now if we go to the allow list, we can see it in the list here. We can make any changes or delete it from here. If we select and delete it. Now what will happen if I have selected a policy, like I have selected a configuration policy as allow list, but I have not created an allow list. So then no registration will happen because a policy is configured to allow a certain users as per the list, but there is nothing in the list, so it will not allow anyone. And even the registered devices will get unregistered at that time. So we need to have the list configured if you have a policy applied. So this is about the configuration. Then we have some other options I would want you to go through, like protocols. Here we can see HTTP2.3 SIP endpoints. So HTTP2.3 by default is off. You can enable it if you have HTTP2.3 endpoints and you want to register those HTTP2.3 endpoints. You can enable it from here. Yeah, you can enable it to on. The registration UDP port of HT23 is 1719. This is the default port. And for call signaling, there is a UDP port used by HT23 that is 1720. Yeah, these are both the default ports. Now, what is this registration conflict mode? Registration conflict mode is set to reject by default. This is for any other device which overlaps. If let's suppose any device with the same alias comes in and gets registered. Now, if any device with the same alias device tries to register with another device, so will it be allowed by the expressway? No, it will be rejected. So by default, it is rejected. Other option is to override. In override, what happens is if one device is registered and with the same alias from other device a request comes in for registration, it will be allowed to register, but then the first one, the previous one will automatically get unregistered. That is called override. Yeah. So this can sometimes cause problems back and forth between the devices when they are both trying to access with the same alias to get registered. So it is recommended to have a reject so that there is no overlapping of the endpoints with the same alias for registration. So that is about this. Then within protocol, you can also find SIP. SIP is by default enabled. Yeah. So here for the lab purpose, it was off. We can enable it to on. You can enable a UDP mode, TCP mode for SIP to on off. You can have TLS mode. TLS is recommended to be used for secure communication between the SIP endpoints that we can configure from here. Then we can have interworking enabled if we have SIP and HTTP2.3 endpoints and we want interworking. So we can enable interworking from here. So we have options like interworking on, off, and registered only. In case of interworking off, the expressway will not allow the SIP and HT23 endpoints to be able to communicate, whereas in on, it will allow the two different endpoints, SIP and HT23, to communicate. And in registered only, it will allow only the devices to communicate between the HT23 and SIP if at least one of the endpoint is registered to expressway. So it will not allow the endpoints which are registered on CUCM and let's suppose a gatekeeper, but not an expressway. So at least one of the device has to go through expressway. That is registered only. Whereas in case of on and off, it applies to any devices registered within the same network uh, to let's suppose CUCM or another devices. Then we have applications. In application, we have things like find me. Yeah, here you can find like the option key. You can do hybrid services for connector management in case you have to connect to the expressway E. This is where we have to do some configurations. We have to add certificates. We can register for certificates for those services. Business to business user agent, when you have a business to business RMS license, so then this will be operational. So in case of business to business or a third party interoperability for Microsoft or any other services,